I will call to order the Arvada City Council for February 6, 2023. Call upon Councilmember Randy Mormon.
Thank you, Mayor. For tonight's moment of silent reflection, I ask us to honor Black History Month, which has begun this February, and to reflect on our Black and African American leaders and heroes. And also like us to consider during our reflection how we can sit with our neighbors who are different than us. I was reminded this week of a Jewish tradition called Shiva, in which we sit with someone who is mourning. And I think that oftentimes our neighbors need us just to sit with them. And they may be different, maybe having different experiences, maybe hurting. And so I ask that we reflect on that tonight. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kristen Rush, if you'll do the roll call.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Here.
Councilmember Marriott.
Here.
Councilmember Mormon.
Here.
Councilmember Simpson. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
I'd like to make the motion to excuse Councilmember Simpson from tonight's business meeting.
Motions to excuse Ms. Simpson, who requested this. That passes 6-0. Ms. Simpson's officially excused from tonight's meeting. We have some people signed up for public comment. I'm sorry. The approval of the minutes. Any changes or corrections to the minutes of January 23rd? Seeing none, they will be submitted as presented. Now I'll move on to public comment. Tonight, for public comment, we like to have this opportunity for our citizens to come before us to have their 3 minutes to give us their thoughts on various matters. This is not a time for debate. It's not a time for City Council to give immediate feedback. If feedback is being requested, we'll have a member of our team give that. But we will certainly listen attentively to your comments. I'll begin with Kia Ruiz. I'm sorry. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Williams and City Council members. My name is Kia Ruiz, and I am a resident in District 1. I'm up here tonight to speak on behalf of the Arvada Sustainability Advisory Committee, your committee, and we're asking that you consider funding Sustain Arvada for 2023. On January 23rd, the City of Arvada had the employee start in the Sustainability Coordinator position. And currently, if you look under Sustain Arvada on our website, in parentheses, you see conservation. So it's kind of like a catch-all for a lot of things dealing with sustainability and conservation. But what we're really missing are benchmarks that we're trying to move towards. And so in thinking about funding Sustain Arvada for 2023, we want you to think about it in coordination with our strategic plan, and particularly with the work areas of community and economic development, vibrant community and neighborhoods, and really thinking about it as a piece with economic viability and resiliency. We all know what happened with the Marshall Fire. It got really close to Arvada. Some of our neighborhoods, we were in zones that were on pre-evac orders. The realities of climate change are happening. This is something that our residents are asking for now. And so we need programs like this funded to work with the sustainability coordinator so that we can actually decide how are we moving forward with these realities. And so this is not just great for kind of thinking about these benchmarks, but a lot of forward-thinking cities right now that are looking at sustainability and sort of these cohesive plans. You're attracting more diverse workforces. We're attracting different kind of companies. Hestra came in here, and they actually are great leaders in sustainability with what they're doing in the outdoor sports industry. So we're asking you to consider funding Sustain Arvada for 2023 to work in coordination with our new sustainability coordinator. And as a member of your advisory committee, we're all here to support you with any questions you may have and as we go forward for the economic resiliency of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Darlene Chang.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm Darlon Chang, an Arvada resident at 6876 Juniper Court in the Geos neighborhood. 4 years ago, I moved my family from Texas to Arvada in order to live out our values on transitioning to sustainable living both personally and professionally. History is in the making as the United Nations and the International Energy Agency sound the alarm on the urgent need to make dramatic steps globally towards sustainability by 2030. I want Arvada to be a true leader in sustainability in this historically crucial decade, and I believe that the hiring of a sustainability coordinator 2 weeks ago was a much-needed step in this direction. I'm here to ask City Council to take another step by funding the Sustain Arvada work to create action plans to achieve the goals of the city's strategic plans. Now that the city has a sustainability coordinator on staff, funding for Sustain Arvada would help ensure that the coordinator has the resources to achieve the goals identified by the city. I'm a director at a startup company focused on decarbonizing homes, and my company is planning to build in Arvada all-electric net zero homes like the one my family lives in. With action plans in place, Arvada could attract new business from companies like mine, not only for building new net zero homes from the ground up, but also for renovating existing homes to be free from expensive gas and electricity bills. As a former oil and gas worker from Texas, I served on a just transition roundtable for oil and gas workers in Colorado and gave a public comment to the state legislature last Thursday on House Bill 23-1074, a study bill on the details of such a workforce transition. I told the Just Transition Roundtable that many of the skills that oil and gas workers have could be transferred to drilling geothermal wells, like the well in my house that keeps my family warm in the winter and cool in the summer, using about a quarter of the energy that a typical American home uses. I also shared that many technical skills of oil and gas workers could help them rapidly climb the learning curve of replacing old furnaces with heat pumps and water heaters as well, in addition to improving the energy efficiency of existing buildings. Sustain Arvada action plans would speed up this transition and attract business while making our city a leader on a critical issue of our time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr., is it Bathy Cubing? I apologize. There you go. Very good. Sorry, your handwriting's almost as good as mine. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Williams and City Council. My name is Bodhi Kabeen. I'm 12 years old and am a resident of District 1. I find my bad. Fund Sustain Arvada for 2023. I've been to many climate strikes in the past few years, and I'm concerned about the lack of water and snow and increased major fires, like the Marshall Fire. I want for Arvada to develop a climate action plan and acknowledge climate change is real. This is my future. Don't mess it up for me and other kids. Fund Sustain Arvada this and every year. Thank you.
Thank you for coming before us with your comments tonight. Is there anybody else that would like to address City Council at this time?
There's one on Zoom.
One on Zoom. Very good.
Taylor Jernigan.
Hello, my name is Taylor Jernigan. I'm a resident of the Alta Vista neighborhood. I'm here tonight to talk to you about your hiring of a sustainability coordinator. And first of all, I want to thank the City Council for moving ahead with this. This is something that is critically important to make the City of Arvada competitive, increase our ability to attract businesses, employees to the city, and residents. I would like the city to follow up by providing the sustainability coordinator with the funds needed to proceed. Tonight, what I'd like to talk about is the section of the plan about virtual or vital communities and neighborhoods. I live in the Alta Vista neighborhood, and in our neighborhood, we have been experiencing deforestation. The houses in our area and the trees are 60 years or older, and in the past several years, we've lost probably about a third of the trees in our neighborhood. What I would like to see as an effort towards sustainability is that the city of Arvada increase its efforts to educate and subsidize local residents to replant or plant new trees to replace those that are being lost. These should be trees that are designed to do well in our increasingly warming environment and increasingly arid environment. I would also like to see the city of Arvada expand its efforts to encourage and subsidize residents to replace residential lawn with the xeriscape, and contained within that xeriscape should be the capability for inline watering of those trees that we are replacing. I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota in the 1960s and experienced the devastation of neighborhoods that happened with Dutch elm disease. As we look at the encroaching emerald ash borer, this is an issue, reforestation and maintaining forests in the city neighborhoods, that is critically important. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you and for considering my request. Good night.
Good night. Thank you for your comments, and I appreciate the northern lights. Have a good evening. Okay, we will now move on to,
Hey, Mayor,
yes.
I think we have a Boy Scout in the audience.
Oh, I apologize. Come on down.
Let's put you on the spot.
Sorry we missed you during the Pledge of Allegiance. Tell us your name and what badge you're working on.
I'm Tanner Farley, and I'm working on citizenship in the community.
It's good to have you with us tonight.
Good to be here.
Good. We're only going to go till about midnight or so you're going to be able to hang out that long?
Sure.
We won't. Thanks for being here. Okay, we have one resolution. It's a resolution authorizing acceptance of a memorandum of understanding between Adams County, Colorado, and the cities of Aurora, Brighton, Commerce City, Federal Heights, Northglenn, Thornton, Westminster, the town of Bennett, and the city and county of Broomfield regarding homelessness services and related First Amendment joining Arvada to the memorandum of understanding. Ms.
Mr.
Gillis.
Mayor, members of council, I want to give you a little bit of background on this. Adams County and the cities within Adams County participate in an MOU that governs the partnership related to responding to the homelessness issues in Adams County. The Adams County government strives to ensure that investments in homelessness have the biggest impact on the most vulnerable residents. This ensures that the resources continue to improve outcomes for people experiencing or who are at risk of experiencing homelessness. Adams County and the municipalities have made progress in funding and serving people experiencing homelessness through various initiatives such as Severe Weather Action Plan, Adams County Day Works, homelessness outreach, mobile showers and mobile laundry services, mobile home initiatives, housing navigation and mediation, respite housing, and Next Step. However, there are countywide gaps in services indicating that coordination on shared priorities is needed. The purpose of this MOU is to further strengthen regional coordination and improve outcomes for people experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness through a shared vision. Through a commitment to share and utilize available data, the parties agree to identify resource and service needs for people experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness and potential location for properties that can best provide those resources and services. The work is intended to be multifaceted and long-term commitment resulting in solutions to addressing current challenges with persons experiencing homelessness and their access to services and housing. Don Wick is here to answer any questions.
Very good. Open it up for city council questions or action. Ms. Smith, you're first, then Mr. Mormon.
I'm here to make a motion, so.
Mr. Mormon, did you wish to speak?
I was going to make the motion, but I will certainly yield to Councilmember Smith and
She's just quicker on the button.
Yeah, I guess so. But just want to say that I'm in strong support of this, especially after our study session on homelessness a few weeks ago, and understanding especially the work that our Deputy City Manager, Don Wick, has done and stressed to us the importance of this type of collaboration, this effort underway in Adams County. So I really appreciate that and strongly support it.
Ms. Smith.
All right, I move that R 23-015, a resolution authorizing acceptance of a memorandum of understanding between Adams County, Colorado, and the cities of Aurora, Brighton, Commerce City, Federal Heights, North Glen, Thornton, Westminster, the town of Bennett, and the city and county of Broomfield regarding homelessness services and related First Amendment joining Arvada to the memorandum of understanding be approved. I appreciate this step forward for affordable housing in Arvada.
Motions for approval? All votes cast, that passes 6-0 with Ms. Simpson being an approved absence. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to public hearings. We have several that will be opened at the same time. The first is ratification and approval of CP 2002-003, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado to amend the 2014 Arvada Comprehensive Plan land use designation pertaining to Sabell Filing number 3 from medium-density residential to high-density residential located west of Urban Street and south of West 58th Avenue. We'll also consider R 23016, a resolution setting forth certain findings of fact and conclusions as to the annexation of certain land into the City of Arvada, Colorado, Sabell Filing 3, a parcel of land located west of Urban Street and south of West 58th Avenue in the County of Jefferson, State of Colorado. We'll also consider Council Bill 23002, an ordinance annexing certain land into the City of Arvada, Colorado, Sabell Filing 3, a parcel of land located west of Urban Street and south of West 58th Avenue in the County of Jefferson and State of Colorado. And also Council Bill 23003, an ordinance rezoning certain land within the City of Arvada, Sabell Filing 3, from Jefferson County A2 Agricultural to City of Arvada PUD Planned Development, and amending the official zoning maps of the City of Arvada, Colorado, parcel of land west of Urban Street and south of West 58th Avenue. And with that, we will also consider the PUD development plan for Sabell Filing number 3, generally located west of Urban Street and south of West 58th Avenue. And we will also consider the preliminary plat for Sabell Filing number 3, generally located west of Urban Street and south of 58th Avenue. Rob, you going to lead us off on this?
Sure will, thanks. As you mentioned, there are a number of items here that the applicant is requesting. A comprehensive plan amendment, annexation, rezoning, PUD development plan, and preliminary plat, all to allow for the construction of 45 townhome units on a 2.5-acre parcel of land. The proposed comprehensive plan amendment for medium to high-density residential is consistent with existing development located to the east and north of the site, and the proposed density as part of the planned unit development zoning is also consistent with existing surrounding development. As part of this project, the street network in the area will also be improved, and will create a system where Urban Street will connect up to 58th Avenue, where it currently dead ends with Sabell 1 today. There will also be a connection on West 57th Avenue between Ward Road and Tabor Street, and the intersection of Urban and West 58th Avenue would be signalized with this project. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve the comprehensive plan amendment during their December 6th meeting. They also unanimously recommended approval of the annexation, rezoning, PUD development plan, and preliminary plat during the same meeting. We have received the signed posting log and mailing affidavit, and they are in order. The applicant is in attendance for a presentation and questions, and we also have Senior Planner Linda Hoover here with any, if you have any questions for her as well.
Thank you. Posting log and mailing affidavit will be made part of the record. Will everyone who wishes to testify on this matter raise your right hand? Swear affirm the testimony you're going to give in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Very good. We'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Council. My name is Matt Cavanaugh. Would you like me to spell that for the record? Cavanaughh, 5740 Old Wadsworth Boulevard, Arvada. We are excited here tonight to present this filing 3 of Sabell to you. This has been a project that we've been working on for a number of years. I think we began this in 2015. And the way I describe this piece of ground is that we have developed and entitled the lands on either side of it, so it's kind of the hole in the donut. And so with that, I'd like to go through the presentation, and John Prestwich here is with PCS Group, and he'll lead us through the presentation.
Good evening. Yes, John Prestwich with PCS Group. We're a land planning, landscape architectural firm in the metro area, 200 Calumet Street, Denver, Colorado, 80223. Thank you, Rob, for your presentation, and I think you've probably seen it in the staff report. Linda did a very thorough staff report, so we will keep this presentation relatively brief. As part of the presentation, I always want to take a quick moment and acknowledge the team that's been assembled, provide all the technical skills required for the design, studies, documentation for a successful application. And then, you know, as Matt kind of indicated, on the right side of the slide, you'll see Phase 3 of the Sabell community. It's highlighted in blue. And so you can see it's actually completely surrounded by Phase 1 and 2 of the existing Sabell community. Phase 3 of the community is a logical extension of the Sabell neighborhood and provides land for the completion of Urban Street, which is a required street connection for the area. And the townhomes proposed in Phase 3 here are similar to the townhomes in Phase 2, just to the east of the project. This slide depicts the overall Sabell community with just an air photo where Phase 3 is located. Again, just showing how Phase 3 is surrounded by Phase 1 to the west, Phase 2 to the east, 58th Ave to the north, and then again across 58th are the existing multifamily homes. This slide adds Phase 3 to the overall plan. Overall, the proposal is for 45 townhomes, which is about 25% less than what the proposed zoning maximum density would permit. I highlighted the land included in Phase 3, so you can see that the land included in Phase 3 is required for the extension of Urban Street to that new signalized intersection. There's an existing ditch to the east of Urban Street between the street and the Phase 2 townhome area. Again, this simply is the overall illustrative master plan for the full community. Phase 3 includes pedestrian connections to the western part of the community and again completes that street network. And we know that the architectural designs will be further analyzed as part of the more detailed FDP process, but we've provided just two examples to highlight that the intent is to be consistent with the adjacent Sabell community. The townhomes will include a mix of roof lines, gable, shed, flat roofs, second floor balconies providing private outdoor space, also provide cover for the entry areas. And again, the architectural designs will be further evaluated to ensure conformance with the code as the more detailed design process is going through. And so this really wraps up our presentation. In summary, Phase 3 is a logical infill addition to the city of Arvada. The proposal includes a comprehensive plan amendment as part of the process to ensure that the application is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Infrastructure has already been designed and installed to serve the property, and this proposal will contribute to regional improvements. As part of the larger Sabell community, we worked with the City of Arvada Parks Department on the Arvada Park that has been recently completed, which provides a pedestrian connection to the Van Bibber Trail system. And then finally, Planning Commission and staff have recommended approval based on review of the city requirements. So thank you for your time this evening, and we're here to answer any questions.
Very good. Does that complete your presentation? Yes. Is there anyone that would like to testify either for or against this project? Do we have anybody by Zoom? We do not. We did have one email from a citizen that I'll ask the applicant to respond to. This was from a Liz Carr, just replying to Sabell hearing letter I received as a current resident of Sabell. I would like to submit my only concern would be for parking. This development is already pretty squeezed for on-street visitor parking. Often my guests have to walk from further away spaces than those by us, which are often full. I would be concerned that a high-density development would add further pressure. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. I sympathize with the residents of Sabell 1 just a bit right now because we've been under construction very heavily over the last 2 years. And the vertical construction has made it difficult for the residents living there, and it's getting better, I feel like, on a day-to-day basis as we're completing the project itself. This project meets the criteria for the parking. In fact, we brought a parking slide if it was helpful, but we meet all the criteria for the parking. Each home will have 2 garage spots for their own vehicles. Through our covenants, we will enforce that people use their garages and not just for storage, because that's often an issue. And I think that we've done the best that we can with the topography of the project and so forth to just provide as much as we could for this piece. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Open it up for city. I'll close the public testimony portion. Open it up for city council questions or action. Mr. Pfeiffer, you can lead off.
Yeah, so I do want to see your parking slide.
Sure.
Because you have 45 buildings, you have 2 slots. How wide are your garages? They're just copying what you've had in the other places, but they look smaller. These buildings look smaller than your other.
Than the first filing, yes, they
Yeah.
are. They're the same size as the second filing.
So how wide are your garages?
The garages are 18 feet wide.
Oof.
Yep.
And their alley?
Yep.
And
they're-
how wide's the alley?
I believe the alley is 30-foot easement for all the utilities and so forth.
Each alley is 30? All of them are 30?
I believe so.
And if I was trying to glance, I didn't see the fire district looked at this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, they have.
Because I got information from the fire district saying that they were concerned that a ladder truck couldn't get into this area. So anyways, they've told me they've been concerned. I don't care what was said here, but fire district told me they're concerned about getting a ladder truck in here because the density of this development as a whole is more dense than apartments that require sprinklers and require a ladder truck to get in there.
Yeah.
And now you're asking for it to be even more dense. And I believe the filings to the east and west are PUD, is that correct? Is that, they were originally PUD
To the
zoned?
west is a PUD.
One
yeah.
is PUD, the Sabell 1 is a PUD, Sabell 2 is R24, which allows
24.
24 units per
And,
acre.
and you said north is comparable zoning,
there's-
which is not. I don't
There
think
is also
accurate.
R24 to the north across 58th,
And we're asking for high density, which is
up to 24 units per acre.
24 units per acre.
Correct.
So if I can just add, this project will be sprinkled, number one. Number two, we do use turning radiuses that demonstrate a truck can make all of these turns, and that's part of our submittal. So we go through the checks and balances, and in fact, this will be sprinkled
So
with.
you will sprinkle these?
Correct.
That's
Yep.
a good answer.
Yep.
And then the only thing is the parking. So I do want to see your parking slide because
Is it right here?
living right there at one point and then driving through there and even actually looking at your products, it's heavily used, which creates a not a very quality product at the end of the day when you have that much parking and cars are everywhere and it just looks horrible for a community. So I'd like you to go through. I saw this slide earlier, but you have a different slide than this, or are you just going to go through this?
No, this is the actual parking slide. We didn't include it in the presentation. We brought it in case there were questions. So what's highlighted in purple are the actual garages. So again, 2 cars fit in each one of the garages. What's highlighted in that sort of teal color are the off-street parking spaces. And honestly, they'll be hidden from the public street because they'll have the townhomes in front of them. That gets us to 104 parking spaces. The requirement is 99. In addition, we have on-street parking on Urban Street that has like the curb is pulled back so that it provides a dedicated area for that on-street
It
parking.
won't narrow the street, will it?
Exactly. It goes the opposite way.
Because this will be a signalized intersection, right?
Correct.
So I don't want to narrow it at
Nope.
all. It's hectic. As
It-
some of the staff knows, like some of the townhouses up in the Candelas area that I went through, you couldn't even drive around some of the stuff with 2 cars coming there. And I think that, especially if you're trying to get traffic to go through the signal,
Sure.
we don't want to make it so tight that you can't get folks through. The concern I have is knowing where and people's lazy habits could be is the south side of this property. There's not really any visitor parking. And I wonder if there's something you can do to address that.
It's possible.
because knowing what's going to happen is they'll just all park on the street. And that I think that's where people get upset, because there's nowhere to park, there's nowhere to find, and then you just start bleeding into the other communities around, and it just becomes one big parking lot.
Sure.
It becomes downtown Denver. And so, we're suburban. I think we need to look at a little bit more quality around parking. I appreciate all the proactiveness, but I think something has to happen on that south side of that land. But maybe you can come up with an idea with that.
Sounds good.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Marriott?
I just have one quick question. These are not the townhomes that are separated, correct? This is actually 10 or 11 buildings with multiple units in each building?
Correct.
Okay, sounds good. One other thing, I'd like to reserve the motions to be made on this one.
You may. I see, Mr. Mormon.
I just have a quick question on sort of the history of why is this the last piece, this donut hole part? Can you explain that to me?
Sure, that's a good question. When we acquire land, we begin this process like we did in the first filing. We approached this property, and at that time, the families, there were two families that lived kind of on the same property, and they were not ready to sell. So naturally, we acquired the property that was to the east of it. We went as far as we could there, and at the time that we began that process, they approached us, and we were able to work out a way to buy that from them, and here we are to do that. So,
Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
So there was another developer that came and offered a bunch of trees after they did a development. I'm wondering if that is of interest of you to donate trees as well, given some of the sustained Arvada that they were talking about earlier.
To donate some trees?
To Arvada.
We put a lot of trees in our projects, but, we'd consider that, sure.
Awesome, thank you.
After parking.
Sure. Parking, then trees.
We can do extractions on annexations that we
go.
can't do on anything else. Mr. Marriott, do you want to make your motions?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that CP 2022-0003, a resolution to amend the 2014 Arvada Comprehensive Plan Land Use Designation pertaining to Sabell Filing Number 3 from medium-density residential to high-density residential be ratified and approved. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Motions for ratification and approval. All votes are cast. That passes 6-0 with Ms. Simpson being an excused absence. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Next, I move that R 23-016, a resolution setting forth certain findings of fact and conclusions as to the annexation of certain land into the city of Arvada, Colorado, Sabell Filing 3, a parcel of land located west of Urban Street and south of West 58th Avenue in the county of Jefferson and state of Colorado be approved.
Motions for approval of the findings of fact as to the annexation. All votes are cast. That passes 6-0. Ms. Simpson being excused absence.
Okay, next I'll move that CB 23-002, an ordinance annexing certain land into the city of Arvada, Colorado, Sabell Filing 3, a parcel of land located west of Urban Street and south of West 58th Avenue in the county of Jefferson and state of Colorado, be approved on final reading, numbered 4835, and ordered published by title only. This motion is based on the findings of fact and required conditions adopted by the Planning Commission.
All votes are cast. The annexation is approved 6-0 with Ms. Simpson being an excused absence.
Okay, next I'll move that CB 23-003, an ordinance rezoning certain land within the city of Arvada, Sabell Filing 3, from Jefferson County A2 Agricultural to City of Arvada PUD Planned Development, and amending the official zoning maps of the City of Arvada, Colorado, parcel of land west of Urban Street and south of West 58th Avenue, be approved on final reading, numbered 4836, and ordered published by title only.
Motions for approval of the rezoning. That passes 6-0. Ms. Simpson being an excused absence.
Okay. Next, I'll move that a PUD development plan for Sabell Filing Number 3, generally located west of Urban Street and south of 58th Avenue, be approved. This motion is based on the finding of fact and required conditions adopted by the Planning Commission.
Motions for approval of the PUD. That passes 6-0, Ms. Simpson being an excused absence.
Okay, and finally, I move that preliminary plat for Sabell Filing Number 3, generally located west of Urban Street and south of 58th Avenue, be approved. This motion is based on the findings of fact and required conditions adopted by the Planning Commission. And I'd like to make a comment. Obviously, there's 6 motions there, and I didn't want to comment on all of them, but I do want to comment on the overall development as a whole. I want to give the developer credit for doing a very nice development there. As I've watched in my time on council, this land get developed, I think you've met very well what the market has demanded, but also things that get to the goals of housing in Arvada. There is a mixed use of products there, everything from single-family homes to others, at a big variety of price points, and the additional supply that this creates has absolutely had a positive impact on the housing pricing within Arvada by having this additional supply as well as these additional options, and particularly having all the different options that are out there for buyers to choose from, I think has been positive. So for that reason, I'll certainly be voting yes. I voted yes on all the other motions. We'll be voting yes on this one, and wish you luck on your completing your development.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I just echo what Mr. Marriott said, but also wanted to say that my office is right there to the south of your project, and you've been a very, very good neighbor through construction, and just appreciate the fact that you're here and that you're doing these types of projects to help further our housing stock in Arvada. So thank you very much. And I will be supporting the motion as well as I did the others.
Yeah, and I'll certainly be supporting this as I did the others. And I want to thank you for keeping the Sabell name. You know, Mr. Sabell was a major player in this region for many, many years with his greenhouses and his landscaping business. And I think you've done a nice job of honoring his heritage. He was a character, but was a good man, and I think it's really classy that you kept the Sabell name.
More reason to plant trees after the parking.
Your preliminary plat is approved 6-0, Ms. Simpson being an excused absence. Good luck with completion of the project.
Good night.
Thank you all. Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing on Council Bill 23004, an ordinance rezoning certain land within the city of Arvada, Colorado, Ralston Gardens from RN 7.5 residential neighborhood 7500 to MXN mixed-use neighborhood, and amending the official zoning maps of the city of Arvada, Colorado, parcel of land generally located at the southeast corner of Ralston Road and Garrison Street, formerly known as 5790 Garrison Street. At the same time, we'll consider the major modification to waive the requirement in section 5-1-2-5, paragraph G1 of the City of Arvada Land Development Code, LDC, that requires at least 75% of the units to have a private outdoor yard, patio, or balcony approximately located at the southeast corner of Ralston Road and Garrison Street. Rob?
Thank you. As mentioned, the applicant is requesting a rezoning of a small parcel of land from RN 7.5 to MXN in order to have a single zone district across the development parcel. This is a small piece. It's the hillside as you go south towards the community garden. It was platted, so there was a little mismatch in the zoning, so this just clears up that zoning mismatch. The applicant is also requesting the major modification to waive the private outdoor space associated with individual units. There are a number of larger community-oriented open spaces as part of this project that would compensate for that. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of both the rezoning and the major modification at their December 6th meeting. We have received the signed posting log and mailing affidavit, and they are in order. The applicant is here for a presentation and questions, and we also have Jake Nichols, a senior planner, with us, if you have any questions for him.
Very good. Was there a posting log requirement?
Yes, the posting log and mailing affidavit are in order.
Posting log and mailing affidavit will be made part of the record. Anyone that wishes to testify on this matter, if you'll raise your right hand. Swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in these proceedings will be the truth and the whole truth, but nothing but the truth. Okay. Ms. Farah, you have to swear twice. With that, we can have your presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's great to be here tonight. I'm Maureen Fair, Executive Director of the Arvada Urban Renewal Authority at 5603 Yukon. So it really is great to be here tonight to introduce the next item on your agenda, Ralston Gardens. So as you guys know, it is so hard to do affordable housing, and it takes a whole host of people and organizations to come together to make it work. So actually, the city and Aura are both behind this project. So let me give you just a little history lesson as to how we got here. So it had to have been, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I was having lunch with our former utilities director, Jim Sullivan, for those of you who've been around for a while. And I asked him, what are you going to do with that old building sitting there, the water treatment plant? He says, well, you know, it's a city stores, and at some point we're going to relocate that city stores. And I said, so what's going to happen then? He said, you want it? I'm like, yeah. He says, you got it. Pending your approval, of course. But that was probably the easiest negotiation I ever did. So it took a few years for the city to relocate the stores, and $350,000 later, we have cleaned it up, and now I realize why it was such an easy negotiation. But seriously, it's a great piece of land. It's beautifully located. It's kind of going to be this affordable project that is beautiful. Wait till you see the renderings. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background and to introduce George Thorne, who is one of the most highly regarded developers of affordable housing in the region. He is with Mile High Development, and he is partnering with Brinkshore. So with that, I'd like to introduce George.
Mr. Thorne, so that we don't disappoint the scout, I understand your presentation will take us close to midnight?
Yes.
No, it won't.
No, sir.
I heard you took 40 minutes at Planning Commission.
No, sir.
I don't think you'll need that
I usually
tonight.
talk too long, but Jake Mitchell has left me a message, and I thought, oh, this is great. Jake's going to give me some input on what to talk about, and he simply said, be brief. So I'm going to let Andre Barrows here in a minute talk, but I want to thank Maureen and Aura and you, Mr. Mayor. So Mayor and City Council and City Manager Gillis and staff, all of you that have worked with me over this odyssey of time, because I came up here. That first meeting we had way before the city stores building was in 2011, before Maureen was the director and Tim was still running Aura, and I came up here with one affordable housing project under my belt. And Jim Johnson, the architect that many of you remember that did a lot of good projects up here, brought me up and introduced me, and I was the expert because I'd done one project. Well, now this will be my 11th project in that ensuing 11 years. And I think by far the best thing that we will have done as Mile High Development since I entered the affordable housing business in that time frame, 2010, after doing about 50 or 60 other projects around Colorado and California over the preceding 40 years or so. So I'm delighted to be in Arvada. I love your city. These projects are really hard to put together, and the cost pressures that we're seeing today, both from inflation, supply chain, interest rate increases, all of it, even since our December 6th meeting, are really difficult. We have our financing in place with major players. KeyBank is our tax credit investor and construction lender, and Fannie Mae is going to do our permanent loan. Those deals are all ready to close within about a month if we can get a building permit. And the last big piece that you're considering tonight really is this rezoning was something you asked us to do to accommodate making the, as Rob mentioned, the same zoning. So we're here to describe to you why we think not providing balconies, which is something we've been doing now for several years, and probably our two best projects prior to this, neither have balconies, 130-unit project in Denver and a 118-unit project up in Westminster. So we've been there, done that. There's a good reason for why we're asking for this, and I would appreciate your consideration and support. as you have given so willingly over the past 10 years as we've moved into the affordable housing reality, that we just have to build more affordable housing. So thank you again for your attention, and thank you, Mayor. Oh, there he is. He's the sleuth. This is Andre Barros from SAR, and we also have with us Carrie Daly, the architect, who on a day-to-day basis has to put up with me. It's a handful. She's wonderful. And I'm going to turn it over to Andre, who really came up with the whole design concept. So, Andre.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for your time. We're going to run through the project and try to bring you along for the journey that got us here in less than 5 years. What we want to talk about, and I'm going to give a little bit of history because, you know, people come and go and you just kind of want background, but the rezoning is really simple. As Rob pointed out, this is basically a map drawing error, right, that the property boundary and the zoning boundary did not align, so we're clarifying that to align. That was motivated by the community garden not wanting to maintain the hill, so they gave it to us, and so we're moving the property line so that we take care of the hill portion along the south boundary of the two properties. Here in this aerial map, you can see it's basically right at the boundary of the community garden and our property. What I want you to remember from this slide as we move through the whole thing is really the context that this project is dealing with. This is not your usual context. This building is fitting into a unique location in Arvada that's not a bunch of single-family homes. What we're up against is the boundary of the sea of parking adjacent to Walmart, and then some amazing community assets like the Ralston Central Park, right? So this project is right at the fulcrum of those various features. But the context of scale is really driven by that Walmart. The other thing is just thinking about all those amenities that residents will be able to walk to. And again, this is a slide we started with at the community meeting in 2019 when we first introduced this idea, 2018, it was pre-COVID. Right, talking about just what a sweet site this was relative to all the things a resident could walk to. And we were starting from that as the sort of roots of the project. Then as you move in closer, that manifests itself in a couple of ways, but most particularly in the Garrison Paseo. So that's a separate project that Aura's taken on and it's designed to link the community south of the project to Ralston Central Park, but it's also the front door of our project. So layering on top of all of the existing that's out there is also this park that's the front door to the project. And then the last time we were here was, of course, for the conditional use permit relative to parking. You can see that we're also including green space as part of the parking lot development. So layering on all of these outdoor experiences and varieties of outdoor experiences. The last bit then is the sort of closest to home. The front door of the project is an indoor-outdoor plaza, an indoor-outdoor plaza. So it's a space south of the building, adjacent to the community gardens, a space between the buildings that is a protected courtyard, and the front door, which is a sort of low-rise element that greets you every time you come home to this building, that links those two together and creates social space. The other piece of that you can see here is the intimacy of the courtyard. So again, given the scale of Ralston Central Park, the scale of the Paseo, we wanted to make sure that the residents had different sizes and types of spaces to experience. And not only is this one intimate, but it's also designed to be kid safe. You can let your kids just go down here and run around and you're not worried about them getting loose, so to speak, right? So again, trying to really accommodate that outdoor experience in multiple ways. It may look in some images like it's a small space. That was intentional, like we said, but we also carefully paid attention to the proportions of the length and width and how much light we get into that space. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but this is important as we get into later the conversation about the balconies. Here again, just zooming into the interface with the Paseo and the front of the building. In our plaza, it's also functioning as the loading and the trash pickup. Given the constraints of how Garrison Street navigates this block and the very limited access that we have to that street, we had to get really clever and creative in making sure that that front door experience is both guest-friendly and vehicular-friendly. So there's a mountable curb there and sort of guardrails to make sure that trucks don't go where they're not supposed to. But, at off hours, there will be trash pickup from that plaza. So again, a lot of different things happening there, but want to be kind of transparent about how that's all working. It's also water retention, and again, there's barricades to make sure none of that spills into the Paseo. But conversely, we do want the feeling of the Paseo to spill into our project. I think George made a comment that he's spending twice as much on landscape on this project as anything else he's ever done. And a lot of that is to make sure that that outdoor feeling, like the Paseo, bleeds right into the project. We've also been really careful in this area to designate maintenance with the Paseo. The Paseo is, of course, a public amenity, part of the right-of-way. And we have sort of agreements in place as to who will maintain each little piece and where the construction starts and stops and navigating all that. So again, at the end of the day, it's a seamless experience for the residents and the community. The other thing that this diagram shows, as we get kind of into the gymnastics of how we put the project together, is the small urban park on the bottom left here. That is the edge of the parking lot. But rather than just a sidewalk that lets residents shortcut over to the Walmart, we've treated it as yet another outdoor space with an enhanced sidewalk and additional trees, more trees, and more parking. It's worth noting at this point that the parking requirements for this project are nearly 2 parking spaces per resident. Statistically, the residents are likely to be parked at about 0.25, so we're probably 4 times overparked. So I think we're well addressing the parking of these residents and all their guests, et cetera. Here's the other thing about thinking of, the impact of balconies versus the form of the building and thinking about outdoor space. So when we first started approaching this project, you can see on the top left, we did a traditional C shape, which is very common for multifamily projects. You wrap a courtyard. It's a very efficient form, but it really doesn't live well for the residents in the way that we wanted them to have that outdoor experience. Facing due west would normally be good for mountain views, but it's also your Walmart and your fast food views. It didn't work well for a front door experience, and it was not that safe place we wanted to create for children. Flipping it 180 degrees to open up to the appliance store, same problems, even worse exposure. We then carved out the donut, really tight donut, but decided that didn't get enough daylight, right? So it began to create that safe space that we needed, but not the pleasantness that we wanted. The fourth scheme across, you see we carved that open to the south, connecting to the community gardens and get that south light. But again, that wasn't that safe spot for kids. And so you finally see that hybrid on the end. Really kind of thinking through every step of the way, the optimization of the building from both a user experience perspective and a cost efficiency perspective. Here's just one more example of that. That pavilion building that links the outer courtyard and the inner courtyard is strategically pulled out of the building. Traditionally, you'd place the amenity underneath the building and then spend a lot of money putting structure to hold up the building above it. Well, it turns out that a really beautiful wood roof over that space is less expensive than the steel you'd use to hold up 4 stories. So we can actually end up with a much more beautiful front door experience, a more beautiful experience for the residents walking by between the community of the south and Ralston Central Park, and save money for the project. So we're always looking for ways like that in this project, affordable housing, to keep things affordable and livable at the same time. Another example of that is in the overall expression of the building to the street. Here you can see that the investment in the detail at the base of the building, the pedestrian experience, right? This is along Garrison Street. So you're going to have, along Ralston Road. So you're going to have residents walking from that bus stop to the Walmart, and we're enhancing their pedestrian scale experience, not the experience of the building up above. The building up above is scaled to the Walmart, right? It's your big box, and the human experience is at the bottom of the building, balancing cost and efficiency and human experience. One last thing there. The other thing that this is doing is specifically designed to provide a buffer for the residents living on Garrison Street and Ralston Road. We don't want them to be feeling like their front door is a busy street. So again, creating a bit of a buffer and not throwing them out on the street with a balcony. Here's just a blow-up of the entry pavilion. One of the things you'll note in there is a large bike storage room. We anticipate that a lot of the residents here are going to take advantage of the amazing trail connections from the site, both through the Paseo and the Ralston Creek Trail and all the others in the area. It's a short bike ride to the train. Having a substantial, safe, and generous indoor bike facility does make it easier for residents to use. It also takes away one of the most common uses of balconies, which is bike storage, right? So if we're gonna not have a place for people to store their bikes on their balcony, we need to make sure it's safe and secure inside, and they don't get utilized unless they're really safe for the residents. Here's just a quick shot of the efficiency of the upper plan and that courtyard relationship. So you can see how we've kind of maxed out the building in the east-west direction. When you get into a unit, one of the things that happens is you have two choices when you add a balcony, either to add it to the outside of the building or to subtract from the unit. So the option is either to shrink the whole building to create room for those balconies to be outside the footprint of the building, or to subtract from the living area of the unit. And so we really feel that by addressing that in the sort of fundamental design of the building and the relationship to the outdoor space, that we don't have to make that trade-off of compromising the size of the building and therefore the number of units or the livability of the unit by subtracting a balcony. And here you see it again in the larger sort of two-bedroom, more family-oriented unit, and in the three-bedroom, clearly family-oriented unit. Just a few shots of the elevations and the composition that we worked with there, the other two sides of the building, and then a few closing shots. Here's the approach from the parking lot. Again, you park your car and you walk home to an element that is park-like and feels like you're walking home to a home. And then the view walking from Kitty Corner across the street, and then finally the view from the gardens, which are at the top of the hill, in another consideration. Thank you very much for your time, and we welcome your questions.
Any additional presentation?
That's it.
Okay, do we have anyone who would like to testify for or against as to this matter? Seeing none, I will close the public comment portion and open it up for City Council questions or actions. Mr. Mormon, you're leading off.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the project, and I appreciate a lot of what you put into this, and there's a lot of things I like about it. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to jump to the balconies, which I have a problem with. And for a couple of reasons. One is that I didn't appreciate some of the comments that I read about the fear of balconies being used as storage, because I feel like that's almost going down to a line of where affordable housing, you don't want balconies so people use it for storage. And so setting a dichotomy between those who are in affordable housing and those who aren't. And so that's one of my big concerns with this, is that we're saying affordable housing, we're not going to give you balconies. And so I have a problem with that. I also have a problem with it because, and the comment I think was made by Councilmember Pfeiffer earlier about the previous project, that we don't want to look like downtown Denver. And this building without balconies looks to me like an office building. I have an issue with it not feeling like it's a home. And we live in Colorado, and we have beautiful weather most of the year, and I appreciate the design outside and really having a very inviting green environment there, but people also want their own personal green space. And when I look for my first apartment, I've been doing this a lot with my son lately, that's what they're looking for. And low income is like, where's my own little space outside? And having a window is not enough. Being able to open that door and step outside and have your own outside space. And so those are my concerns primarily about that. And it really comes down to that equity issue. Are we saying affordable housing, you don't get a balcony? And I have a problem with that.
Do you want to go first? Go ahead. So I think that's a consideration we absolutely wrestled with, because equity is fundamental, and that's the point of building affordable housing. One of the considerations here is that the typical resident profile of someone moving in here doesn't have the disposable income to buy an extra set of furniture to put on their balcony. So as much as they want to use it and as much as we idealize it, the reality is that the person living here is going to have either an empty balcony or use it as storage. And so the ability to increase the amount of units we're building and sort of stretch those dollars and provide more shared amenity space, we think was just a more sort of equitable way to allot the dollars, and sort of the reality of how these get used. In spite of our ideals, the reality is they don't get used the same way we idealize in this product type. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Andre addressed it, Mr. Mormon and members of council, but I've been in now, by this time now that I've been in the affordable business for a dozen years, hundreds of buildings, I would guess, throughout Colorado. I'm also fairly familiar with the market rate apartment market, the people who live there, and how affordable housing kind of fits into the matrix of housing. And I would have to take issue, particularly on an equity issue, which I think is an argument that you can make about a lot of things. But in this case, I think a resident given a choice to go down into that courtyard versus sit out on a patio with two very basic little chairs. Maybe you can afford to furnish your patio with chaise lounges and chairs and cocktail tables and things like that. I guarantee you these people can't. I've seen it, I've witnessed it. We made this decision early on. We've discussed it with the staff. As I said, we had a very good discussion with the Planning Commission, and I take exception. We put a hell of a lot of thought into what these tenants can really enjoy and appreciate and be proud of. And I think if you lined them up and asked them, how do you feel about having a balcony or having more space in your unit, having a beautiful courtyard, having all this landscaping, I think the answer would be they feel pretty damn good about living in a building like this, designed this way. I can't argue with your downtown Denver comparison. This is a contemporary building. I think it would stand up well in the halls of architecture against any other building in metropolitan Denver. And I built in every market here, high-end, middle-end, and now affordable housing. I'm proud of every building, and I'm damn proud of this building. And I think the equity argument is a poor way to go, and an argument that you can make anytime you want to throw that out there. And I frankly hope that the other city council people can see that we've gone the extra mile to provide to these tenants pride, belief in where they live, both the way it looks from the inside and the outside. And believe me, a balcony doesn't create all that. If you think that, I think you're just wrong. So thank you.
Mr. Marriott?
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, the first issue of the rezoning, of course, is a non-issue for me. I think that creates a clean situation. The balcony thing, I have comments or concerns about too. The question I have is, if you go back to some of these renderings of these elevations, did you guys explore much about how to make some of these elevations maybe look a little less kind of broad and stark? Because as I look at that, to my eye, particularly with the, you know, it's kind of got that European flat look of the windows recessed and no breakup of the facade once you get past the ground floor, and really quite large, quite long expanses of the sameness. Was there any thought of trying to do something different there, or was that what you were actually trying to do?
We were trying to be very judicious about creating a building where it read at an urban scale for the scale of, again, Walmart and Ralston Road, and sort of it's a big street there with high-speed traffic at the upper stories, and a very pedestrian experience at the ground level, and to play the contrast of those two off. That when you're walking by the building, you're experiencing the human scale of it, and when you're driving by the building, you're experiencing a different scale of it. And trying to create an urban edge in contrast to the Walmart, and trying to create something that will anchor that corner with, you know, the commons development happening Kitty Corner, the park, and really sort of create a landmark there.
Yeah, I think the stuff at ground level looks great, and the two different tone there, but it's from there up that I worry about, and when I think about, well, it fits in with the Walmart and all that, the Walmart is set so far back, it's really, to me, they're not analogous, and it's, I believe if the plan's still in place, the ones that'll be kitty corner across the street, I think are gonna have front stoops, kind of front walk-up stoops, so kind of a completely different, almost 180 from the look of this, and of course, in some ways, I agree with Mr. Mormon about the balconies. Balconies would break up this facade some, I think, and make it look good. And, my own personal view is, I've recently been shopping real estate downtown, and I wouldn't even consider buying a place without a balcony. You know, anything without one is, I won't even go look at. Obviously, I'm not searching for affordable housing. It's a little bit different thing. But I don't know. I guess you guys are the experts in it, and I'm prepared probably to support your request without balconies. But I'm a little concerned by it too, and a little concerned by just, you know, what the overall look of this building will be from the Ralston Road side. Given that, and I totally understand the efficiency of building without balconies and the increased space you get without either insetting them or hanging them on the outside of the building. But I don't know, it's really different from what I kind of would expect out here in Arvada in the suburbs. So that's more of a comment really than a question. I appreciate you listening to me rattle on. Something, I don't know, just something different on those long elevations, I think would catch my eye better.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Well, I was going to say exactly what he said. I'll give you an example. I do think the balconies break it up. It's texture or something. Because we've always, when we look at something, we look at the facade of something and how it'll look. And yet we're investing, tens of millions of dollars on Ralston Road. We have a very high-end park that we invested a lot of money in, and then we just have the square block, So and then we put this paseo in that they're putting in, and we have this block. You know what I mean? It's a block. So I struggle with that as well. Architecturally, I get you want to be affordable, but even putting art on it or something different to break up this stark wall. That's the exact same word I was thinking of. And I'll give you an example of a property where hindsight's always 20/20, right? Park Place that looks over the park over here at McAvoy on Wadsworth Bypass and Ralston Road. We thought it was broken up and it had some square colors on it. And hindsight, that was probably the worst thing we did facing Wadsworth Bypass. And they had more texture than this had. So I'm just a little concerned as well that we're kind of missing a little bit, because I do agree that even if it's affordable or not, and I appreciate you trying to keep your costs down so they are affordable. My son's in the mental health and industry, and he can't make more than $22 an hour. He's probably one of the tenants here. But if we're investing this much money in the area and you want to seize a quality of life, I think your property should contribute that a little bit, not just to have living, but how do you become part of the system we created that we've invested so much money in? It could be as little as paint, art, something else that's higher up. That could be unique and creative. Just some thoughts, but still keep it affordable.
Can you elaborate on what, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the building that you said felt chopped up. Can you elaborate on that?
You mean over here, the one I was referring to,
Yeah.
Park Place? So when you're on Wadsworth, it looks like one massive wall. I don't think there's even windows on it, if I remember right. I'm looking. There's some windows? Okay.
Windows make a big difference.
But yeah, there's some windows, very little though. They all face the park, which is the other side. And they have these little coves that face the park. So all the investment was facing west to get the mountains and the park view. And then the parking garage, parking, and minimal windows. And I think the windows are actually halls, if I remember right. They're not for the rooms. Face Wadsworth Bypass. It is, at least there's a depth difference, I believe, in the walls. And then there's some coloration differences to try to break up the stark wall. And so even with that, which is more than what I see here, it was stark. It's dramatic.
Yeah.
And it just looks like it looks like we're walling off our community.
I know that building, and I agree with you. And I'm not taking it. I know the developers. I know the story. Marina and I talked
history
about it a lot of times. I was involved early on.
And I was all for it.
Yeah.
I was all for it, but then I just wish it was a little bit better.
I don't think there's any comparison, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Architecture, in particular, appeals to lots of different people on lots of different levels. This is not a cheap building. This is one of, if not the most expensive. The only more expensive buildings I've built have podium parking that we had to build a concrete podium. This is an expensive building. Andre and I, going back to the beginning, had some of these conversations about making a contemporary statement in an otherwise suburban location, but What I would ask you to consider is Ralston Road is changing, Arvada's changing, and I think Arvada's wonderful the way it is, and it's wonderful the way it was 20 years ago, and I've been driving my kid up here to play hockey going back 30, 40 years out to this very area that we're standing in tonight. I've been up here a lot. And as I said, I love the city. I wasn't blowing smoke at you. But I think in this case, with Ralston Road and the project across the street, which is also designed by this guy and this team and SAR, right across Garrison Street, is also a contemporary statement. And I think, you know,
Well, and that's a good point, because that's what the other question I was going to bring up was, how does it contrast or compare to adjacent the intersection to the new development that's happening over there?
But I guess my point is, when you think of the change that's going to happen when Ralston Road is finally completed, I'm sure you've thought about that a lot of times, and you're going to be happy to see it happen, and so am I. But I think buildings like this and the amount of landscaping, which is kind of hard to reflect when you look at just images like this, I think what we've done here, in a tribute to Andre, is it's been softened a lot by all the things he said. The interior courtyard is interior, so that's not going to do a lot for how you feel about looking at that particular corner of Ralston and Garrison, and I don't think we should be comparing it to the Walmart. This is a contemporary building in an evolving urban-suburban location, and I think what we did was appropriate, but I'm not going to argue with you on that. Like I made some comments before, Mr. Mormon, that on a totally different thing, I beg to differ on the balcony issue, because I have had a lot of experiences with balconies. We didn't do this just as a cost-cutting measure. As I said, we're going to end up with about $320,000 a unit in cost in this project. Now, you can compare that to some pretty nice suburban condominiums, and whether they have balconies or not, frankly, doesn't make a heck of a lot of difference in terms of the overall cost. We made this choice because we thought it was the right choice, and we've been living, in this kind of design environment for a year and a half, 2 years, and this is the first comment I've ever gotten from anybody in Arvada that I know of, that A, the building was too contemporary, and B, not having balconies was a design issue. I think one of the ugliest things you can put on a building, a balcony is a poor excuse for articulation. It's not fenestration, it's not movement in the wall, it's not architecture, it's junk, in my opinion, and they cause tremendous maintenance problems. Every market rate project in downtown Denver, that you looked at, whoever made the comment, maybe you, Mr. Marriott, they're moving away from balconies as well, but there's certainly a lot of balconies, and I think a market rate, high-end luxury product like you see in Union Station almost has to have a balcony. Those people can afford to spend $25,000 on their balcony in patio furniture. These people can't, and they won't, and I beg to differ with those of you who said you're making it sound like they put junk. They don't. That's frankly all they have. They have hand-me-down stuff. They have things that, we try to actually in our units actually build them in a way with islands and things like that, and they don't have to go buy furniture because these people are in many cases working 2 jobs, and they're not out buying patio furniture in their spare time. So I'll stop there, your comments are all very astute, and I think we have the right to disagree.
Yeah.
And I think we've made a statement that we have been comfortable with for quite a while now, but we're also not living with our head in the sand.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about his porch thing, so I want to talk about my architectural design of it. And I'm not an architect. I play as one, I feel like. Let me ask the team here, because the team has coached us that we need to see character. When you create a building, there has to be depth and material differences and so forth. And you're saying that this is the first time you've heard anyone tell you that you should have material differences and depth and contrasts in a singular building? I'm looking to the team because I thought that's our code.
I'm saying I have. If somebody's told me that, please tell me again.
I think it's in our code.
I don't hear very well, but Could hear that.
Yes.
This building does meet the articulation guidelines.
The top 3 stories do?
Yes.
And can we look at the, from Ralston Road?
Yes, it does meet all of the design standards, and I think that perspective gives it a little bit, you don't see some of those wood panels that are running down from the roof all the way down to the ground floor. They're kind of breaking up the white panels. You didn't really see those on that perspective as well because it's kind of at an angle.
Yeah, I mean, this is, so I think we tried very deliberately to break it into volumes, but not play, this isn't about, a random arbitrary patchwork of pattern. This was about trying to create masses that were related to the way the building was laid out inside, to where the windows landed, and it was a more compositional approach and not a, let's add a break to the building, just to add a break to the building. So for example, each of the vertical zippers corresponds to where we needed either mechanical or daylight into a corridor or structural change. The stepping in the roof is similarly corresponding to elements. And so yes, we were trying not to create a facade that you looked at and said, wow, why did they put that random brown box there? We were trying to compose it around the way it was laying out.
But do you see what I'm saying about it looking like a stark wall?
I
Marriott said the same thing.
absolutely see your opinion, yes.
It looks like, I agree, it looks like an office building, and that, I think that's where I'm struggling. I don't get why we enforce this on others and then minimalist on this one. I'm looking at staff because I don't get that. That throws me. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 12 years.
Sure.
And Mayor's been doing it longer,
actually,
but.
A question, because I really resonate with the comment about diversity. I mean, is the intention of the variation here to create all the buildings to look the same or to create diversity of architecture in Arvada?
I think Ralston Road's kind of like our main road.
Great.
And I never envisioned our road to have just a stark wall. I envisioned the road to be welcoming and very Arvada and very, we're a bedroom community and we don't have huge office buildings. I think our tallest building is like the First Bank building on 64th and Ward, isn't it? I think that's our tallest building. And so, I mean,
sure,
we don't really have this here. If you drive through our 44 square miles, I don't see this like that.
Correct.
We only have one time to make it right on this road, and I envision the road completely changing, and it's a main drag, and it'll be our main street, and it should have diversity, and it'll have buses, and I'm just trying to picture how this looks to what we were sold when we spend tens of millions of dollars fixing this road from our staff who says, this is how, we'll have 10-foot sidewalks. This is how they could look, 2-story in depth. There could be setbacks on the top levels. You had a vision of a main street. And to me, when you look at Ralston Road from that side, it just does not fit. Because once it's there, it will always be there. And I just don't see. I love your employee or the resident entrance and how that all works. It's perfect. I think that's great. It's very, everything about that. It's the main road facing that gets me.
So if you look here at the way that the building is broken on the top corner to Ralston Road, it is broken up strategically into separate pieces. So I think when you look at the flat elevation, you don't realize those giant steps that are occurring. And the scale of that the northmost piece, if you look at it compared to, say, the AutoZone or the KFC, is comparable in size to the AutoZone or the KFC. So I think that maybe the rendering is a little bit deceptive there. It is a deliberately homogeneous wall. However, the scale of it is 3 units across. So that's the size of about 3 homes, about the size of the KFC, right, the width. And so if you think about the articulation of driving down the street, I would venture to guess that you're not thinking, wow, that KFC looks out of scale. So again, I think that maybe there is a little bit of distortion going on here. The north face of the building is 3 units across, the scale of the KFC. When the buses are going by and you're zooming by, it's actually maybe smaller than the appliance store that's right there. Now, the appliance store is going to look smaller because it's 100 feet off the street because of the parking. The Walmart's going to look smaller because the Walmart is a football field away from the street. And so again, yes, you're going to perceive it differently. But once Ralston fills out into an urban street with buildings all along it, hugging the street and creating that urban edge, I think this proportion is going to actually set a benchmark for well-proportioned modules that work well with the streetscape.
Ms. Smith?
Thank you. I won't be as harsh, I promise.
Oh, this is a wonderful dialogue. We welcome the dialogue. We're here for fun.
No, I do. I actually, it makes sense to not have balconies given the demographics and type of units that you're trying to build for. I think when you have this courtyard, you have this open space, this park area, you're creating a community area. It reduces social isolation. There's areas for case managers to have neutral areas for those people that are utilizing some of the case management and social programs on these vouchers. So I think it does make sense. I think there's some workaround in that we could add a mural. We could have some of that artwork like we did with the post office, and it came out great. And I'm sure the art, there's a lot of people that would support something like that. So I think that there is some workaround just to work on maybe some art or mural just to break it up a little bit. But the no balcony, I think if it increases units and you have compensated in the sense that there's courtyards, there's open space, and it's next to this Paseo, I think it makes sense.
Thank you. And one last thought on the issue of balconies. There is no one-size-fits-all solution on balconies. Over the last 10 years, I've probably worked on 5,000 units of various scales and sizes. One of the most successful projects that SAR completed was Spear in Washington. The building had 0 balconies in it, leased up overnight. It was a high-end product. It had a fabulous fabulous amenity, courtyard, right? That each building, you sort of prioritize how you run it or not. A lot of these buildings, right, we stare at a lot of these towers downtown because I work downtown and I stare at them all day. The balconies sit idle all day long. And it is a constant conversation on every one of those projects, on every one of those balconies of how, what drives, whether you build it or not, what drives the user experience of it or not. How do you get a balcony that people actually use? And the delta between a balcony that people use and a balcony that checks the box is actually pretty dramatic, right? You want to pull it back and create a sheltered space. You actually want to spend the extra dollars to create a balcony where people want to go hang out and feel welcome. And simply tacking it on to check a box doesn't do that. And I think we were trying from day one to hit that experience and not just check the box. And we hope that this project does that.
Mr. Jones?
Well, thank you. This has been a fun conversation to listen to as well. And so just a couple of thoughts or a couple of comments. One, I appreciate kind of the thinking around it. My son lives in Denver. He has a balcony. His balcony is used for his pet. So they don't have to go all the way down 6 stories and outside to the pet relief area.
Sorry.
But they have also a bike storage area, similarly to the one that you've proposed here. It doesn't get used. And so they're actually redoing that now and repurposing that now to something else. So I wonder actually how much it will be used. Again, I think that, I guess that's the hope, that people will use that amenity. But at the end of the day, I think what you've done is created a nice project. I hope you'll take some of the comments from my fellow council members, and as you think about kind of the final look of this, to ensure that it is a piece that we can like to look at and drive by for many years to come. So you're feeling a specific need of housing units in our city, and I think that's what's most important, and so that we don't get sidelined by some of the more details, architectural details that I'm not, Mr. Pfeiffer is, but so that, again, so that we can get this housing stock built for those that will actually use it. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you've put into this.
I'll wait until a motion gets made, and then I'll make some comments. Ms. Smith?
I'll make the motion.
You may.
Yeah. I move that a major modification to waive the requirement in section 5-1-2-5G1 of the City of Arvada Land Development Code, LDC, that requires at least 75% of the units to have a private outdoor yard, patio, or balcony approximately located at the southeast corner of Ralston Road and Garrison Street, approximately located at the northwest corner of Ralston Road and Garrison Street, be approved. This motion is based... Oh, crap.
You can go ahead, and we can go back and do it.
All right, well, hold on one second. This motion is based on the following findings of the facts and conditions, if any, adopted by the Planning Commission, if approved. Oh, I just read that all down. This motion is based on the facts and findings Findings and fact, oh man, let me try this one again. This motion is based on the following findings of fact and conditions adopted by the Planning Commission.
Okay, so we're dealing with H first, and then we'll go back to the rezoning. Okay. Ms. Smith, do you wish to speak to your motion?
No.
Mr. Marriott?
Yeah, I want to speak to it. So I'm going to be voting yes, but I got to say with some reservations. I think you know best how to do subsidized housing, and that's what we're doing. I have concerns about the way this may stick out, and I guess I'm not, as I look up and down Ralston Road at all the potential development that could or may not happen up and down Ralston Road, it's fairly minimal because most of the properties along Ralston Road lack depth. They probably stay very much like the way they are now for most of it, with some exceptions. And one of the exceptions might even be the property right next door. But I'm concerned by just what it looks like. The cornices, the lack of cornices on the top. There's no treatment along the top. I think this picture shows better what some of the articulation is, but I think you guys have to be able to deliver. I mean, that's the object here, as many units as you possibly can for as low a price as you possibly can, so that the individuals receiving the subsidy get the most subsidy they can get. And so at some point we have to acknowledge that that's what's going on here, and that's what we have to do. So I'm going to be voting yes. I think in general, I wouldn't take this as a negative at all. I think in general, this is a exceptionally well done project. I think the front door that the residents will use, the integration with the paseo, how you dealt with the parking, I think all of that stuff is spectacular. So I don't want this to come off as necessarily negative. But yeah, so I'll be voting yes.
Mr. Mormon?
Mayor, I'm a strong proponent of affordable housing, and we definitely need more in the city of Arvada. There's no question about that. I'll be voting no on this motion for the reasons explained earlier. I think when you're doing affordable housing, you have to think about quality of life. And we certainly don't want slums, and I'm not saying that that's what this project is, but I think we've got to make sure that when we are providing housing, that it is housing that people are going to want to live and be able to live their fullest here in Arvada. And I strongly disagree with the choice of not having balconies, because we live in Colorado, and that's part of our quality of life, to be able to have that outdoor personal space when you need to be alone. So I will be voting no on this motion.
Mr. Fiver?
So I would say 95% you're there. I love this. This is great. You hit everything about everything, except the last 5%, which is there's so much artistic involvement in this area that it maybe, like you said, the eye and beholder. And you know what's great about art is you debate about it, right? I mean, that's the best part of art. So we're just having a good debate, and I'm hoping I can bring you a little bit closer into our community, where there's 7 of us, or 6 tonight, but 7 of us usually up here, who are trying to shape our community, because once you're up, it's always going to be there, or at least through my lifetime. So I'm going to look to the team to work with you to see if there's just some little something you can do just to make that difference a little bit better, so it's not so stark. Because we do want it beautiful. We want it, I mean, the whole south side of this is gorgeous. You know it is. It just feels like the main drag is missing just something that pops a little bit. So I'm hoping the team will hear us on council. I will support your request, but I just ask if you can just do just a little bit more to get it over the finish line, facing the sides and the corners, just to kind of bring in the outdoors. You got the gardens on the south, you got a paseo. You actually did a pretty good job with this parking lot, even with the trees and stuff. And then you have this very beautiful park north of there that has a nice memorial. It just seems like you're right there in the middle of this beautiful area that you would just do a little bit more with the building to blend in. So either bring woods or something more natural or something. But, or I can come and paint. Lisa and I will come and paint a mural for you. No, we won't be painting. So I just want to say I'll be supporting it. It's just if you can just maybe figure out something way to break that stark wall up just a little bit more would be very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be supporting the motion. I appreciate Mr. Mormon's comments in terms of we certainly don't want to create a classification that, will allow you not to have balconies if it's a affordable project, but we're going to require it in other situations. We may determine that there are going to be other situations with higher end product where, for good reasons, we may not have balconies. I think that what you've testified to as to the desirability of your tenants to have more usable indoor space is convincing to me. I think having, I live out in a very nice part of town, and I have tons of neighbors that have really nice patios that I never see anybody on. So in terms of checking the box, I don't want to check boxes just to be checking boxes. So I can comfortably live without having the balconies in this. I would suggest that you talk to Ms. Fair about the artistic element that's going to go in at the new project to the west on the north side. The apartment complex that's going in there has a very large wall that they're doing a really beautiful mural on. And so, there's something like that you may want to consider. I don't struggle with the architecture. I would try to break it up with a little bit more tasteful mural than what was done on Park Place in Old Town. So with that, all votes are cast. That motion passes 5-1 with Ms. Simpson being an excused absence. If you want to go back to the other motion.
Try that again?
I'm going to let you have one more shot at it.
Okay. Rezoning, right? All right. I move that CB 23-004, an ordinance rezoning certain land within the city of Arvada, Ralston Gardens from RN-7.5 residential neighborhood 7,500 to MX-N mixed use neighborhood, and amending the official zoning maps of the city of Arvada, Colorado, parcel of land generally located on the southeast corner of Ralston Road and Garrison Street, formerly known as 5790 Garrison Street, to be approved on final reading numbered 4837 and ordered published by title only. This motion is based on the findings of fact and required conditions adopted by the Planning Commission.
Well done. Motions for the rezoning. All votes are cast. That passes 6-0, Ms. Simpson being an excused absence. Thank you for the discussion.
Thank you very much.
We wish you every success. Mr. Thorne, having come down to testify in favor of this project down at the Chaffa process and seeing what those people think of you and the credibility that you have gives me a lot of assurance that this is going to turn out to be a great project. So congratulations, and we look forward to it moving forward. And I know that the Urban Renewal Board is anxious to see this occur as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and your feedback.
You bet. Do we have any individual who would like to address City Council during public comment? Do we have anybody signed up? We do not. I'll close that public comment portion. Reports from City Council. Let me lead off. We heard with sadness the passing of Cindy Kreitzer. Cindy Kreitzer was someone who was very involved in this community for a number of years, and I would call her a very important part of the loyal opposition. Cindy and I did not see eye to eye on a lot of things, but we did agree that we both loved this city and that we wanted what was best for this city. We'd go to lunch, we'd have discussions, and we certainly would have times where we would agree to disagree. But she had valuable points. She served admirably on our Citizens Capital Improvement Project Committee, had great input on that in terms of really advocating strongly for the facility that was built, the city shops on Old Wadsworth, and also a great supporter of the Ralston Road project. So although she chose to move away from Arvada for some family reasons, her husband had inherited some property, as I recall, some place back east. She would come back and visit and sort of check in on what was going on here in Arvada. So we do want to acknowledge her passing. That was she was younger than I was, so way too young. Mr. Marriott, I know you wanted to make
Yeah.
some comments as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make some comments about the untimely passing of Ms. Kreitzer as well. I first met Cindy when I first ran for city council in 2013, and she could not have been more gracious. She invited me to her porch, and we sat down and had several discussions with her and her friends, and I still don't know whether she ever supported me in any of my elections or not. I'm kind of not sure. But believe it or not, we agreed on far more things than we disagreed on, and I always appreciated her involvement in her community, her intellect, her preparedness, her desire to make Arvada a better place. I think we in this town have such a long history of that that's led us to where we are, and she certainly was a valuable part of that for her time here and the time she was involved. And you know, even though she hasn't been here for the last couple years, you know, I'll miss her from being gone. She was quite a great neighbor and a really good friend.
Mr. Mormon?
Well, I'm assuming we're done with comments on.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then I actually just have a boring announcement. And that is, today the Rocky Flat Stewardship Council met, and we discussed follow-up briefly to our meeting with the Department of Energy in regards to requesting air monitoring. The Department of Energy declined our request, is the short piece to that, but we will be meeting in April to discuss other options. So I will report back on that after that conversation has been had.
Thank you for your involvement. And I think we need to take some step to reappoint Mr. Mormon, or did we already do that?
We did that.
Okay, very good. Okay, Ms. Manager.
Okay, just a reminder, next week we have 2 workshops, one on Lake Arbor Golf Course and one on the community survey. And then one of the update I did hear that we are in contact with Comcast regarding the outage that is affecting about 1,000 residents, and we'll continue to follow up. Didn't get a solution or a timeline for that, but they are well aware of the problem.
Well, the meeting next week will be much more well-run because Mr. Jones will be running the meeting next week. So, Ms. Morris, anything from you?
Nothing from me, Your Honor.
Very good. We stand adjourned.